So this is Afshan Samee's introduction. She was born in London and has lived between Lahore, London, New York, Toronto, and Dubai, where she currently resides. She studied literature in German at Stony Brook University, New York. She's the author of Coming Home, a collection of 52 poems that celebrates a soul's awakening. Afshan, through your poetic expression, I can see that you have had a long journey of raveling and unraveling the twists and turns in your life. You are on a search to reach a destined place that will bring you peace. There is actually a point in everyone's life that is a turning point, perhaps some upheaval that prompts or serves as a catalyst to write. You have mentioned in your poems an awakening of your soul. Could you please elaborate on this?
Absolutely. So, Coming Home, like Bushra said, is an evolution of a soul. And basically, for different people, it's different things. So some people can awaken with love, as in Rumi and Shams, and some people can awaken with suffering. And in my case, it was the latter. For most of us, it's the latter. And it wasn't one event. It was a series of events. And if you'll permit me, I'll just read something which I wrote, because so many people have asked me this about the book that I thought, let me intentionally try and make it as concise and clear. So this is an answer to your question, that how the evolution took place. Growing up, as I watched my life spiral out of control, I became more and more separated from happiness. I felt an almost constant state of disconnect from the people that I loved to the world that I lived in. Without even realizing, I was sinking into a depression that would become as natural and invisible to me as the air that I breathed. I did not realize at that time that the epicenter of that separation was within me. The dissolution of this core relationship would ultimately lead me to the furthest point from myself. I had been lost for so long that it took me into my early 30s before I felt as if something was off. I remember I couldn't even formulate the question that may have elicited an answer to the state of confusion I was in. All I could ask, rather feebly, was, "What is it?" This was perhaps my first step towards consciousness and awakening. The answer to this question set me on a journey that I had no idea I was about to undertake, a journey that I now believe to be the greatest journey I or any human being can ever take, the journey back to ourselves. It's difficult to describe the 13 years that followed. It was as if my world had been hit by a slow-moving seismic wave. I watched as the foundation stones of my life soundlessly and systematically dissolved before my eyes. Stability and security crumbled. Belief systems that I had held sacred jeered at me like pieces of worn-out sail flapping in the wind. I was stripped of all that was familiar. I was a stranger in my body, in my life, meeting myself for the first time.
You have elucidated very nicely what your editors were. One poet has said, the literary work has a biological right to exist. The poet gives birth to his work, weaves it seamlessly from his sinew and groin, and personifies it. It gives a new meaning to his life. Do you agree?
I do agree. I think that, and I don't think this is only for writers or poets. I think anybody who's involved in a creative process will find themselves a lot changed at the end of the completion of their project, whatever it is. I also felt that since this book is about awakening, that and it was about 3 years ago that I wrote this and I published this, and I still feel that I'm changing even now because of the evolution that took place in this book.
And in your soulful awakening, were you able to reconcile the beauty inside you to the ugliness in the outer world? And did this reconciliation give you peace?
I think a lot of people think that we have to work towards peace like it's some kind of final goal. It's actually the starting point. If we are peaceful, we can actually accomplish stuff. When we're in a state of turmoil, there's not much we can accomplish. So peace, I would like to say, is actually the starting point and not the end goal. And I think it does. It helps you reconcile everything because you tend to accept everything about you. I think awakening is a process which allows you to accept all aspects of yourself, even the ones that you think may be unpleasant or ugly, as you say. I don't think they're ugly. I think there's some painful aspects of ourselves which are not easy to accept. So I think once you accept what's within you and the parts that you don't like about yourself, it's easy to accept everything that's outside of you as well. And I think if you look at what's beautiful, you'll find what's beautiful. And if you look for what's ugly, you'll find what's ugly.
Right. And do you see poetry as a crystallization of your inner being, an embodiment of it? And the deeper you dig, the more self-revelation there is?
Absolutely. I think for all of us, and it doesn't have to be poetry, not all of us are poets, but I think the deeper we go within ourselves, we discover the truth of who we truly are. And I think once you discover that, then everything falls into place, within and without.
In a hectic, humdrum world where life is constantly spinning crazily, do we now more than ever need to create a space and stillness in our inner lives to re-energize and heal ourselves? Do you agree? What is your take on this?
Absolutely. I think we create spaces outside which, like spas or whatever, to bring ourselves healing or wellness or whatever. But I think the first space we need to create is within ourselves. And meditation does help with that. It just silences everything. And the idea, a lot of people get confused about meditation as well. Just because you're meditating doesn't mean that everything is fine. A lot of people enter meditation and find out that they're very distressed. That's because they're internalizing everything. So I think the point of meditation is just to become still and allow whatever needs to come up to come up. And then I think with practice and with time, as with any discipline, I think you can build that space of stillness, and it also gives you a little bit of separation, like separation from your thoughts, because that's what you're doing. Your mind can still be very active when you're meditating, as I'm sure those of people who've meditated know. Same thing with our emotions. We're so bound to our thoughts and our emotions that there's no space. And that's why we always feel this state of overwhelm. So I think creating that space through meditation or through just some quiet reflection allows us to create space between us and not just our thoughts and our emotions, but the outside world as well. So the events can still be very chaotic, but as long as we stay kind of grounded and centered, we can see them for what they are.
And in our hectic, humdrum lives, where so much of everything is exterior,
exactly,
to create that detachment from all that,
right,
and to create that space for yourself is no longer that easy.
Well, I don't think it's ever been easy, but you're right. It is getting harder and harder because there are so many more distractions. But I think more than ever now, it is essential that we do that.
Your book is titled Coming Home. Irish poet John O'Donoghue said, "Homecoming is coming to a threshold, a point when we thresh our life, separate the grain from the husk. Then we cross over and we come into being. That is called coming home." What is your take on this?
I think my book is really about coming home to myself. I think home is just such a beautiful word. It just brings so much comfort. I think there are different aspects of home, but for me, home really means a return to myself and the truth of who I am. And I think the book also, you can see the process of the breakdown and then the questions and then the answers coming and the reconciliation and stuff. So I think for all of us, we look for love externally as well, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think when we learn to give ourselves what we need and be who we truly are. I think with a lot of trauma, we tend to adopt a lot of different selves and a lot of masks and stuff. So healing is also authenticity. It's the authenticity to be who you really are without feeling uncomfortable or without feeling, that you can't do it. So for me, that is what coming home means.
And anyone who commits to writing, lifelong writing, needs this.
Yes.
The imperative to write.
Yes.
So strong and overwhelming.
Yes. Well, I think I was quite blessed by this because I think I had been so miserable for so long that I was done. I think even with our clients, I'm a life coach, you get to a point where you can be complaining for a long time, but then when you are finally so sick of yourself and so sick of your life that you're actually willing to do something about it, that's when everything changes. So for me as well, it was like, I'd just been so lost, like I said. And then finally, when I started asking, like, what is it? What is happening? Then everything started breaking down, and then the answers started coming. Sure, I'll just read you 3 poems. I think they sort of display this process that's in the book a little bit better. So this poem is called Hidden. The story of my life running through my mind. So many voices calling out, my emotions suddenly surging. Music piercing holes in my armor, small rays of life filtering through. So many doors have I locked behind me. Will I even remember where I'm hidden? Who can love me, my soul so full of darkness, so afraid of being me? Inside the void, a single frame rises, I accept. And so later, after asking all the questions, the answers start coming. There's some sort of breakthrough. The name of this poem is Let the Edges Blur. Don't look so closely. Soften your gaze. Let the edges blur. There is a clarity beyond this haze. It's all here in the present, the past and the future, in this lack of time, where nothing leads to everything. Remember everything, my love. It's here now. This is the last one. It's called Mocking My Lies. I think one of the best things as you start awakening is how you learn to laugh at yourself, that you're whining away and complaining, oh my God, my life is so miserable, and why is it happening to me? And then you have that moment of clarity and you can call yourself out on it. So this literally happened. I live in Dubai, so it's called Mocking My Lies. I fled to the sea weeping, my mind screaming its stories, my heart, a little child, hid behind the door, waiting for the darkness to pass. The sea came to me in its eternity, laughing, breaking at my feet, mocking my lies. You again? Who am I that love comes again and again to take me by the hand and bring me back home? Thank you.
Do you see writing as a stream of inner consciousness, an inner awakening that erupts like an underground geyser? It is the aperture that opens up our inner world to us.
I think the creative force acts in many ways, and for me it was writing, and for a lot of people it can be cooking, sculpting, traveling. It is. The life force is the same as your creative force. So it manifests itself in everything, and often creative people won't be creative in just one thing. They'll be creative in many things. They'll always be in a state of creation. So, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Should we open to questions?
Does the audience have any, would like to ask any question? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I think this is...
Sure, thank you for a chance to read the whole. I've read a few poems. Thank you for being so candid and honest with sort of your innermost, deepest feelings. If you don't mind sharing your creative process, one is curious to know how, because I understand you've written this book over a period of many years.
Yes, exactly.
What is your creative process? Thank you.
Well, thank you. That's an excellent question. I wish I could have a proper answer for that, but this book literally came to me, and I had no plans to write a book, by the way. I was literally scribbling. My children were very small. I was scribbling on receipts and tissue papers and napkins, and just thinking, oh, need to do better, do something better, like work on it. So I kept putting it away, thinking I'll come back to it. And then literally after 13 years, I went to my desk and found an envelope. I was actually starting work, so I was cleaning my desk out. And I started seeing these bits and pieces of poems and thoughts. And I realized in that moment that they were complete, they were fine. And it was me, really. It was a judgment that I had on myself of perfectionism, which often comes with trauma and pain, that nothing is good enough. It has to be perfect. So really, when I went back and I saw the beauty that lies in the clarity of some of these poems, I realized that I was really blessed, you know, and I started putting it together, and that's when I really received the healing. And I call it a healing book because it's an experiential book. It's not an intellectual book. And you really, when you read it, you feel it. And it kind of gave me permission to break down, to ask questions, and then to really just see that there is beauty if you want to look. If you want to step past, everything leads to love, whether it's suffering or whether it's lovely things. Everything is leading you to that goal of oneness, of union, of realizing what a gift this life is. So, thank you for that question.
So I just recently, I'm a publisher and I published a book on Sufism. And listening to your journey here and your kind of the fact that you were very felt awful for some periods of your time and then found your way to a certain peace through your work is kind of reminds me of a book that I just recently published on Sufism. Do you think you have a Sufic kind of affinity to Sufism? Because you seem to have a similar philosophical bent in your approach to life and seeing beauty all around and in a certain state of mysticism. Do you think you have any kind of affinity towards Sufism? I'm just curious.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that excellent question. I have always been spiritual. When I was a very young child, even as old as 5, I just, even though there were a lot of turbulent events in my life, I just somehow understood, and I find to this day very hard to explain why is it that I knew this piece of information, and that information was, hold on, it's all going to work out, all of this is for a reason. Now, I don't know how many 5-year-olds actually go around, but that was just something that I really look back on and find to be a blessing. Because of the chain of events that took place in my life, it was almost like I came programmed with this message that, okay, get ready, don't let go, hold on. So yes, spiritually, I think I'd been there from the beginning, and I think that is one of the reasons I've actually survived all the trauma that I've gone through. We find now that, with the nervous system, that the feeling of awe, the feeling of believing in something bigger actually really helps you come to terms in some way and accept and even make sense of trauma. So that is in retrospect, but I've always been spiritual, and a lot of people have called these poems like they have a Sufi element. And I'll tell you something, the first time I read Rumi, I was like, I felt I was home. Like I felt like, oh, I found my tribe, I get it. Like they understand me, I understand this. So thank you.
Yes.
So your poem, your book of poems, I remember when you first showed it to me, and we found an interesting correlation with a deck of cards, that a deck of cards would have 52 cards of which you could choose one. And not that I discussed it with you, but I did read your book like that. I would turn it around, shuffle it, pull out a poem and see how it made me feel, or if it was connecting to me in some way or the other. Was your intention ever to write 52 poems like 52 deck of cards?
No, it wasn't. But so many people have said that to me, and I love it because once a book goes out, it belongs to everybody else as well. It's not my book. It's your interpretation of it. And I think one thing, to your point, that, there have been so many surprises that I've received, and I say this again and again, that this is not a book that I feel I've written. I've literally been in partnership writing this with creativity or whatever, or divine grace or whatever. But I think what I loved about how this came out, if I had tried to write a book, it would have been a lot more complicated and perhaps not as clear. So I love the fact that the way it came out was clear, it was easy, yet profound. And I think that's the biggest message that I had in my healing with this book, is that trauma, suffering, doesn't have to weigh you down like this. You can still experience it and have it in your life, but handle it very gently. There's a lady present here today who told me something, and it literally stayed with me forever. And I owe her so much. She was a part of my healing, and she said to me, Afshan, hold your life gently, hold it gently. And I was grasping and clasping at life at that point, and it really changed my life. Thank you. So
sometimes you see, sometimes in life we are very harsh and unforgiving with ourselves.
yes, we are the hardest judges
And to
of
need that gentleness to heal.
ourselves, that gentleness to ourselves and to
Yeah.
another human being is so difficult.
Yeah.
So I think it's okay, and I think we can treat trauma and suffering with a little bit of distance and respect, and laugh at it a little bit. We don't have to be like this.
Yeah.
And we don't have to think of poetry like, okay, get ready, it's poetry, sit down, take a breath, get a cup of tea. It can be light, it can be fun, which is, I think, what I've learned as
And
well.
that's where your evolution starts also, you see.
Yes.
It begins like that.
Yes,
the learning process, the inner learning process. That's the biggest gift, that you learn to look inwards. And you see so much of it, the resolution lies inwards and not outwards.
Exactly.
Because we're always looking to the outer world for resolution.
There are no
but it doesn't really lie there. It lies right inside you.
And no answers outside. I think it's just about, like you were saying, being kind to ourselves, being respectful, and just taking life easily. It's so short. It'll be gone like this. So I think and to your point as well, you know, when you have grief is heavy. It weighs you down. You're always like, and being light and happy and joyful is actually good for you and other people, your surroundings, and so much more. So absolutely.
It's positivity that helps you to grow in life. And negativity is just like going down a downward path.
Exactly.
So I have a question. First of all, you're very beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Second, okay, I'm very young and I do write, but my writings, they've never seen the light of day because one, I think they're not worth it. Two, I think that it's too much of me to put in the world. And my question is, did you go through that? Did you encounter that when you were writing it? And if so, how did you overcome it?
So that is an excellent question. I'm so proud of you for writing. I have 2 grown-up kids. So it took me that long to be okay with putting it out. I hope it's not that long for you. But you're not alone. I think every creative person who's putting pieces of themselves into something, it's such a vulnerable space. So it's absolutely fine. Keep writing. You'll know when you're ready. This fly is trying to be part of this conversation. But keep writing. You'll know when you're ready, and it'll come. There's a time for everything. It'll happen when it's meant to happen. But don't stop writing. And be nice to yourself. When you feel afraid, it's okay. It's a lot to put out. You're very young, so it's okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I want to thank you all for coming. I know it's Sunday. Thank you so much, and thank you, Bushra. Thank you so much. I know.